Good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream. I'm going to do your September the 2nd Spiritual Principle a Day in a meditation. I hope you're doing well this morning. The title of the meditation, Untangling Life's Knots with the Serenity Prayer. The Serenity Prayer is a tool we use again and again in recovery. Considering what we can change and what we cannot becomes increasingly powerful. Living Clean Book, Chapter 2, Connection to the World Around Us. The simple binary offered in the Serenity Prayer, sorting between what we can and cannot change, provided quite a bit of relief to many of us as newcomers, especially when our minds were racing. Having this prayer as a new tool in our belt in early recovery enables many of us to muster a bit of courage to work on ourselves and perhaps achieve just enough serenity to tolerate those around us. Over time, we realize there is more depth in the Serenity Prayer than we might see at first glance. Our wisdom to know the difference grows as we accumulate more experience with trying to change our lives. Inserting me into the Serenity Prayer, as in the courage to change the things I can, me, might remind us to stay focused on ourselves, but many of us soon encounter traits that are not so easily changed. They told me I only have to change one thing, and that's everything, a member wrote. I had these visions as a newcomer of changing my diet, getting fit, folding my laundry as soon as it dries, achieving enlightenment, and all that. It didn't take long before I wasn't feeling very much serenity at all. I had to adjust my expectations. In our lives, if our lives were all knotted up when we first got here, we aren't likely to get it all untangled right away. Talking to other addicts helps us better see what knots we can loosen now and what parts of the thread we'll need to accept, at least for the moment, while we work on what's right in front of us. Sometimes the knot gets tighter, which can be a vexing part of the process. As our basic text mentions, we learn that we are growing when we make new mistakes instead of repeating old ones. As we draw on recovery experience, our own and what others share with us, our wisdom grows. Serenity and courage are likely to follow. The wisdom to know the difference evolves as I do. When I say the Serenity Prayer, I will try to connect with the principles behind it. Let's take a moment of silence followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Moment of silence now. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, in the spirit of this meditation, God grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, you, the courage to change the things that we can, me, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? So in the spirit of that, it changes everything. We say it by rote very easily, and it can be very beneficial if we pause as we go through it, because it serves as a kind reminder that I can control what I do, but I cannot control what other people do. I can control my responses. I cannot control the responses of others, right? It's a very simple prayer that a lot of people just go through really quick. But if you actually take the time and pause as you go through it, you'll find that, as I find, it puts things in perspective immediately. So right when I'm ready to jump on the bandwagon of trying to fix, manage, and control a situation, if I stop and take that 5 to 10 seconds to just consider the Serenity Prayer, before I even blurt out whatever it was that I was about to blurt out, I can pull back and allow things to proceed naturally, right? Because a lot of times people aren't interested in your input. They didn't solicit it. The advice that you're about to give, they're grown. And all they want is for you to listen. Now, I choose how long I listen because I may not have 30 minutes to listen to the story that you just told me last week, right? So I choose that part of it. But I rarely abruptly end a person's rant and rave, right? Without being considerate that this obviously means a lot to them. But I have control over my response regardless. You know, have you ever been around someone that said, oh, my disease just took off. My character defects, yeah, I acted out. Why? Why did you act out? Why did you allow those character defects just to take off? It's almost like they're toting the fact that they lack the ability to control themselves again in a similar situation that they've been in over and over and over. All that really reveals, right, is that we need to develop self-control and self-discipline. Now, there's some things that we can't change. And there are some things that we will continue to fall short in, especially if we don't do the daily maintenance. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. It does happen. But I am saying as a direct result of doing the daily maintenance, my prayer and meditation and maintaining conscious contact with the God of my understanding, asking for the knowledge of his will for me and the power to carry it out, as a direct result of being able to walk these spiritual principles out for each step on a regular basis as part of my maintenance. Those occasions that get away from me where my character defects flourish and the shortcomings are right there are few and far in between. Don't think Mighty Stream doesn't have them. I do. And I can tell you what they are, right? When I see someone that is being bullied or pushed around, or whether it be a parent doing it or children doing it to one another, or someone trying to do it to me, shame me, right? I get very defensive to a default sometimes, right? You can be right, but be wrong in the way that you go about things. Okay, so I know what they are, and I can generally see myself coming. This Serenity Prayer is supposed to help us untangle some of the knots in our lives. But it takes patience. Have you ever tried to work out a knot in your, just say your laces that are in your shoes? They're for a child, especially, right? Trying to unknot it for a child. And generally what happens is you have to get like a little pin or something. You have to take time to pry, right, the sections apart from one another, because children don't know that the harder you pull the string, the tighter the knot gets, right? You have to go the opposite direction of the knot. Children don't know that. So when you're working those knots out for children, think about how you need to work out the knots in your own life with patience, right? It takes patience, it takes time, but if you continually apply positive pressure, meaning in the right direction, it untangles. Eventually, it comes undone. If you're patient. Now, if you're like how I used to be, I would get a knot and I just could not. Bring me a pair of scissors and I would just cut the knot right off and try to tie with the rest of the lace that was left. I didn't have the patience. I didn't have the patience for my own knots, less known somebody else's knots, right? How do we do that in life? When we're dealing with our own situations, sometimes they're very resolvable. I've seen a lot of marriages dissolve just because one person or both people didn't have the patience to untangle the knots. They thought forgiveness was going to come overnight. They thought the person said, well, they forgive me, but they keep bringing it up. They thought that they were going to actually be able to have all of the effort that goes with forgiveness accomplished in a day or two, in a few words. Just because a person says they forgive you does not mean that they have forgotten. And it does not mean in a heat of a moment they might not bring that back up. It takes patience to allow forgiveness to be effective. It takes training. You have to train your brain to stop bringing up the past. And the perfect time to bring it up is when they're pointing the finger at you, telling you something about what you're doing. And you automatically go back to, well, you did the exact same thing and I forgave you. Well, did you? It's easy to do. But because couples don't have the patience to untangle those knots little by little, giving each other room and grace, they go ahead and lop it off, grab the scissors and just cut the marriage up and say, I'm done. Let's divorce. That's it. Bye. And 9 times out of 10, when you're really reflective about your own mess that you brought to the table, your own knots that you brought to the relationship, and you try to be, I want to say you try to give the other person the same grace that was required for your knots, forgiveness becomes a lot more easy when we truly consider what we've done and what we knotted up. It becomes easier to allow someone to untangle those knots over time. And so this is where the Serenity Prayer can help us untangle life's knots. It really can save a lot of relationships, a lot of businesses, a lot of friendships. This is something that I know the world wishes they had, but they don't all have what we have. And we got it honest. We got it through the fire of being addicts coming into recovery. I hope this has been helpful for you today. I hope that you will have a beautiful day on purpose, untangling your own knots, because I intend to untangle mine little by little. Talk to you soon.